Welcome to SmithWeekly Discussions, an occasional program for our members of SmithWeekly Research. Please note this program is a private discussion, and everything contained herein is for entertainment and educational purposes only. With that, we hope you're in a comfortable position, along with your favorite beverage, to enjoy the discussion. We remind our audience to examine our show notes attached to each of our shows to better understand how our program functions. Before we get into our discussion, we want to say thanks for questions coming from the audience at Smith Weekly, including Gordon S., Andy J., Jackie A., and Todd W. On the program today are returning guests. Mr. John Wilton and Mr. Derek Iwanaka are with us. John is the president and CEO, and Derek is the vice president of IR and corporate development at BeMetals Corp. The company is focused on exploration for base and precious metals with its Pangeni copper exploration project in Zambia, as well as the Kazan gold exploration project in Japan. BeMetals is listed on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the symbol BMET and on the US OTC markets under the symbol BMTLF. John, Derek, it's a pleasure to have you on the program. Welcome.
No, thanks very much, Andrew. Pleasure to be back.
Andrew, always a pleasure to be back, and I have my warm beverage right next to me.
Well, hopefully it's not just coffee or tea and there's a little bit more excitement added to it, but appreciate having you guys back on. Great to chat again and get an update. So guys, you've been on the program before, so I'd like to start off here. Generally, I think the audience has a good flavor for who you guys are. If not, there's of course prior episodes there that you can check out, but I'd like to just start off with getting your thoughts on the current state of the junior markets, maybe just for copper and gold, if you will. John, why don't you take that away first, and then we'll get Derek's thoughts.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Andrew. I think markets in general are at a really interesting point here and now. As most people listening will be aware, there is this disconnect at the moment between certain fundamental commodities and their prices, and the value of the equity markets and even on producers and explorers for those commodities. I think the good news is we're seeing gold at effectively record highs, and historically we know gold price and interest in gold has been a big driver of certainly the junior exploration market in general, and we're seeing the fundamentals on copper being very strong. In recent weeks here, we've seen a bit of an uptick in the price, which I think is good. And, copper obviously has that big connect with a lot of the clean and green energy that, we need going forward in terms of climate change initiatives. So I think the fundamentals are there, and, we would expect that these will start filtering through into the resource sector very shortly here, and probably a good time for your listeners to be investing.
Derek, what are your thoughts?
I especially like John's last part. There is a big disconnect between the commodity prices and the equities right now, especially in the junior market. As John's pointed out, I mean, you have record highs for the gold price, and yet we actually are very close to record lows on the junior equities. Even for the larger cap miners, they've been struggling as well. So there's definitely a good opportunity here for would-be buyers to come into the market right now because there is such a disconnect and because the equities are so low. But I think there's definitely some optimism on the horizon. I mean, with the gold prices being high, it feels as though the market is just waiting to see if it can sustain these higher prices, and if it can, then the equities should catch up. That seems to be kind of what I've been reading as well, is the equities should eventually catch up if these metal prices can stay where they're at. So we'll see if they can sustain themselves. It appears that they should. Gold for sure has been very strong in the last few weeks, and it seems to be that copper has been dragged along with it, going over $4 recently a pound. So that's nice to see, but again, it'd be even nicer for us, especially to see the equity prices catching up.
Yeah, I think we will see that at some point. It's just a matter of time and digestion, as you guys well know, and of course the cycles here that also play into this. And then I guess the distraction into the broad market that also occurs, as we've seen plenty of times here in the past. Well, John, how about for our newer audience, why don't you give us a quick overview of BeMetals?
Yeah, sure. We're a junior exploration and development company. We're led by a very strong board, led and guided. The company was founded about 5 years ago by Clive Johnson, Tom Garrigan, Roger Richer, and myself. Clive, Tom, and Roger, many of your listeners might well know from their roles in B2 Gold, and prior to that, Bema Gold. Our non-executive chairman, Mark Connolly, a number of success stories in the gold sector in West Africa, very well known in London and Australia. So we've got great guidance in our board. We've got a lean and mean management team, Derek and myself, and Nick Ferber and Kristen Reinertsen. It's all about really keeping our overheads low and focusing exploration dollars into the ground on the projects. Bolted onto that, the more advanced projects that we review from time to time, I work very closely with Dennis Sansbury, very experienced mining engineer, part of the BEMA and B2 teams over many decades. And interestingly, prior to my running BeMetals, I ran exploration in Africa for Antofagasta PLC, the large Chilean copper producer. And during that time, built a good relationship with Dr. Richard Solito, who's based out of London. And we've worked closely together with some other former colleagues on research projects in the Central African and Zambian copper belt. And he's joined us as a technical advisor. Wealth of experience, one of those people you can truly say is world renowned in the sector of economic geology for both copper and gold.
With that, Derek, why don't we have you cover off capital structure as far as shares outstanding, the cash on hand, and if there is a need to conduct an equity financing at some point over the coming months. And then also, if you don't mind, maybe speak to the major shareholders. There's obviously a few highlights there that are on the roster at the company.
Sure. At the moment, we have 177 million shares outstanding, and that's actually been set like that for the last 2 years. So we haven't done a fundraising in the last couple of years. We have received some funds from B2 Gold in the past couple of years, though, some of that in form of debt and some of that in the form of convertible debentures. Very favorable terms for both. So in total, right now, fully diluted, we have 215.5 million shares out. Market cap, I have to say, is pretty dismal, sitting around 14 million Canadian, but we do have about 2.8 million in the bank as of the end of the September quarter. We did bring in $2 million at the beginning of this year. That was in the form of that convertible that we got from B2 Gold. So we do have cash to continue with the programs for now, but at some point in either the second or third quarter, we're going to have to raise some funds, whether that be by equity or debt or some other form of or mezzanine, but some financing will need to be done towards the middle of this year. Hopefully before that, we're going to have some nice drilling results coming out of Zambia. We will have to do some form of financing and hope you and your listeners would be happy to join. In terms of share ownership, the largest shareholder is B2 Gold, so we do have a fair bit of overlap, I guess you could say, with B2 Gold in that we have Clive Johnson in particular is the CEO of B2 Gold, and he's one of our largest single shareholders and is a director of our company. So insiders, including Clive, that's about 20% of the stock. And then we do have a couple funds out of the US that have come into the stock, Fidelity Investments, out of the Boston branch, and then we have Sun Valley Gold that have come in. So we have some larger funds that have come into the stock, and then we have a fairly large retail base. So right now it's sitting around 47%, and I'd say a good chunk of that is probably still friends and family that are in there. So we don't see huge trading, but if there is movement in the stock, it doesn't necessarily take a lot to move it. So for example, just recently, 500,000 shares knocked us down a couple of weeks ago, 2 cents. But if we get 500,000 shares of buying, I'd say equally we could run up at least 2 cents back up the other way. So it kind of goes both ways with the liquidity side of things. But I would say that we are getting more consistent with the liquidity. So we are seeing trading every day, whereas a few years ago there'd be kind of gaps in between some of our trading. So it is getting more liquid. We crossed out a pretty large block a couple months ago now, 6 million shares that went to some of our insiders and some of the brokers at Haywood Securities. So we were able to cross out a pretty big block of shares. And if you take a look at some of our charts, you'll probably see a big spike in volume there in January. So that's what that cross was.
Derek, I appreciate that. Good to cover that off and get an indication of where we stand here and where folks are. And the stock price is quite attractive for the company that has the type of people that are involved here and the ability to sift through some of these projects and zero in hopefully on some type of exploration success as we move forward here. So I'd like to go into work in Zambia. First, as you guys well know, Zambia remains a copper hotspot, and recently saw, for example, Cobalt Metals enter in to the group of majors and juniors there with an earn-in joint venture arrangement with Midnight Sun Mining. Obviously, speaks to the continued interest in this region and Zambia as a very, very good copper jurisdiction in Africa. Derek, how do you look at this point, given some of the things you've seen? What are your thoughts on the interest there in Zambia? And then maybe a little bit later, we'll get into Pangeni exploration grounds and the plans with that project.
It's been terrific to be on the better side of Zambia right now. The last couple of years with HH coming into power, it seems as though everything has been going in our favor, and we've really got a tailwind in Zambia. So, as you pointed out, that Cobalt Metals deal, that's the for those who don't know, that's the AI exploration company that's being backed by large shareholders like Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos. So you have some of these big tech names that are supporting this, and they've made or I guess you could say, a rediscovery in Zambia. It's a large copper deposit that they found, and they recently did this joint venture with Midnight Sun, which is junior, just like us, exploring on the same belt, and a pretty big deal for them. So we are seeing interest from some of the majors for our project. For us, we just want to continue exploring it and make a discovery before I think we want to start divvying up the pie, so to speak. So we're really happy with the way things are going in Zambia in general. And there's even things that are going on, like, for example, Barrick announced that the Lumwana project is going to be doubling. So they're turning that pit into a super pit, which is going to be significantly larger. It's going to be up to 240,000 tons per annum. So they're doing expansion. I understand First Quantum is still proceeding with their large expansion. That was a $1.25 billion expansion of their Kansanshi mine and smelter. So everything seems to be going in the right direction in Zambia. I'm sure John will want to chime in because he's been working there for a number of years as well.
You've ticked off the main points there. I think for us, the one of the important things there is that private company Cobalt that does deploy artificial intelligence, but also is led in their copper exploration unit by some very experienced and very successful explorers, very experienced exploration geologists. And what's interesting there is that they've targeted as their second project in Zambia the that property with Midnight Sun, which is targeting a Lumwana style of mineralization. So that's what we call in Zambia a basement style mineralization. As Derek just mentioned, Barrick are expanding to what they call a super pit there to take that copper production up to 240,000 tons. And that is the mineralization that we intersected in a drill hole that we announced early in January, where we drilled over 18 meters at 0.7% copper. And that's the same style of mineralization. So the intersection we drilled there has got all the hallmarks geologically of that Lumwana style and type of mineralization. So that fits in very nicely. That company like Cobalt with those deep pockets backing them also see the value in this basement hosted style of mineralization. Obviously Barrick do, because they're expanding their operations there. And around the Lumwana deposit, the two other mines, Sentinel and Constantia, which we also term to be in the domes region of First Quantum, also, significant producers. And as some listeners may remember, Constantia was really the project that led to the birth of First Quantum.
Yes, good stuff there, John. I appreciate that. Derek, your comments as well. And you got Ivanhoe just over the border to the north with Kamoa-Kakula and their copper operations there, which have been a tremendous success for Ivanhoe Mines. And also the Chinese are also in the area right there as well. And it speaks volumes too for even a company like First Quantum to come back into and refocus more capital as a result of the issues in Panama. And also given that First Quantum hasn't had a perfect good time, I suppose, with Zambia, but they've been able to work out their differences. And I think them putting more money in there, I think, speaks to the relationship at this point. And so I appreciate the comments there. On Pangeni, you guys had that drill result back earlier this year. Talk about what the next steps are, what that next target's going to be, how you guys are going to be able to get some traction on a deposit find on your property there. Just talk about what the next steps are, when you guys intend to follow up with the drilling, the next steps, and how you guys plan to advance that during 2024.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that drill intersection was really exciting in itself. What's really important there is that having drilled that grade and width intersection, that highlighted a hole on what we call our D prospect that was drilled a couple of years ago, where we had another intersection of 14 meters at 0.37% copper. Bearing in mind these grades that we're talking about, the mines that we were just discussing, Constantia, Lumwana, and Sentinel, are all sort of running between 0.6 and 0.46% copper grades. So, that's the type of grade that these domes region mines generally produce at a very large scale. They tend to be generally tabular type orientated deposits. That's really interesting. So we were so excited by these recent results. We very quickly got board approval to remobilize back to the field, and our field operations already in progress to step out drilling from those two intersections that we now have on the D prospect. Probably also important to remember is that some of the other intersections that we have on the D prospect further to the northeast, we have already identified significant copper mineralization over at least 1.5 kilometers of strike. So now with more drilling going on and more drill results coming in, we can start to link up these zones. And in general terms, these sort of Central African and Zambian copper belt type deposits, once you get onto one, they tend to be pretty consistent and obviously very large number of world-class deposits. And, to mention a few names that we didn't put into that first introduction, we must remember Rio Tinto are exploring at the moment in Zambia and have been for a number of years, and Anglo American. And also, as you mentioned, Ivanhoe, very good exploration success over the last 2 decades in the DRC, and have now expanded into Angola, literally right on the border with our project in Zambia.
Just speak to how you guys see this going potentially. I know this is speculation with respect to the next drill campaign, but just talk about what you guys would expect here. You gave me an encouraging comment that with these types of structures, you guys are able to generally, based on the history of the other comparable projects and comparable drill results, that these are fairly consistent. So do you think at this point, John, you guys would be able to come back, continue to demonstrate that this is continuing and that there is something larger here? What's your thought on that confirmation on the next drilling campaign versus maybe needing to conduct a few more campaigns to be able to really get that delineated?
No, I think in the fairly short term here, within the campaign that we're just in the process of starting now, if we get another 1 or 2 intersections of that sort of type that we've got in that D22 hole earlier this year that we announced, then we would have a pretty good feeling that we were really on to a potentially a significant discovery. What that would be one of the first real new discoveries in Zambia for many decades. One of the reasons that we focused on this project in the very beginning of BeMetals was that the bedrock geology that hosts the mineralization is concealed by a thin veneer of post-mineral sand deposit. So historical exploration wasn't able to be implemented in this area, and we really get the sense increasingly that that sand is covering up a huge amount of copper potential in that bedrock geology.
Derek, any comments on your end as far as how you're looking at this upcoming drill program and just overall thoughts on the prospectivity, if you will, of Pangeni?
Well, I mean, we've been exploring there now for, I guess, just over 5 years. I think that this latest hole in January that we put out was probably the most significant hole that we've released to date. It was probably the first one you could deem or call an ore grade intersection, if you will. So we're super excited about that program. Normally, we would wait for another couple months before we'd even dare to start drilling again, because we are actually in the rainy season technically. But we mobilized everybody. The crew did a great job of getting started there, and we can't wait to get the results of this new program out. So just started drilling, and probably would expect to see drilling results sometime in May. I guess potentially could be earlier or a little bit later than that, but I would say probably May would be a good estimate as to when we could get some drilling results out. And then at that point, if we actually hit again, I wouldn't say it's game on, but it's definitely, that would be a good time to say that we really are pretty confident that we're onto something here. So it's pretty significant for us. I mean, it could be a game changer, really.
Well, guys, I think it's pretty clear that the Zambia focus is first and foremost here, but I do want to just bring across real quick on the other side of the world, the Japan gold exploration project update there. John, any comments on any immediate plans with work in Japan? Obviously, this is second to the focus presently, but just any comments you'd like to add, and of course, remind the audience that you guys do have another exploration jurisdiction.
We've been really actively exploring in Japan now for about 2 years. We did a deal where we acquired a private company that was exploring in Japan. Sometimes people are not aware of the potential of what is really the gold potential in Japan, but enough to say the world's highest grade gold mine is located in Japan, called Hishikari. That's been in production for many decades by Sumitomo Metals and Mining. It's been producing at anywhere between 30 to 40 grams per ton, so very, very high grade mineralization. And in fact, they use that material, the quartz gold ore, is used in their copper smelters as a flux needed to smelt their copper in their big copper smelters in Japan. So it does have a very close tie-in, interestingly enough, with the copper business as well. Currently, we're in a period of a cycle of license renewal on what we call our Kato project, which is up on Hokkaido. That's where we focused most of our drilling to date. We have extended what we call the Seta vein there. These are all a style of mineralization that we call epithermal gold deposits, and they're a really, really exciting exploration targets because they can deliver these real high-grade gold mineralization. And the more we work in Japan, the more time I spend there looking at the geology and the general environment, the bigger sense is you can get more and more done in Japan. What's probably a little bit counterintuitive for the listeners is that the areas that we're working on, especially up in Hokkaido, you're generally in remote areas, not many people in those areas, but with very good supporting infrastructure. And interestingly, a huge amount of local community support. There's big drives by the government and the state in Japan to keep young people in these remote areas of Japan, and they're really looking for projects that could potentially stimulate investment and economic development in these remote areas, such as gold mining. As you mentioned, the focus for us at this point is for current and future investors. Our closest pathway to really getting significant value in our stock is following up on these copper intersections in Zambia, but we certainly haven't forgotten the Kazan portfolio of gold projects in Japan. After we've done another round of drilling in Zambia, we hope to get back to our gold exploration work, and we like the mix of copper and gold in the company at the moment, with the projects being at this exploration stage. We like that mix of copper and gold in the company, actually.
Good comments, and I certainly appreciate the government initiatives there to keep young people and folks who don't want to be in the cities out working in remote areas and working on development activities and finding new ways to create wealth and support for communities that are outside of the cities. I think that that's very important, and I certainly can align with that and encourage that as well. Derek, any comments on Japan here? Go ahead and take comments on that, and then also why we're talking a little bit about community here. On that community efforts front, anything you'd like to mention that the company is doing on community initiatives across its portfolio?
Sure, I could talk about that, but John just jogged my memory that MMJ, which is actually the predecessor to what is now called JOGMEC. I don't think we mentioned it, but JOGMEC is a Japanese state agency that is actually our joint venture partner with the Pangeni property. So I don't think we mentioned that, but effectively they're funding nearly a third of the exploration costs in Zambia. So definitely takes the sting out of the expenses operating there. They also have some input as to what we do technically. So great partners to have. They did some of the early exploration at our Kato property. So we effectively inherited some of the drilling information that those guys did back in the past. But to get back to your point with regards to community work, I mean, I think that John especially has gone into every country and has been really good with initiating as much as we can. I mean, we're just an exploration company, so we don't have revenue, we don't have huge budgets, but we have done our best to employ as many locals as possible, try to source as much materials and supplies that we can from the areas. You know, we're working in Japan right now where you know, not especially in Hokkaido, you're not going to see a lot of mining supplies out there, but we do try to source as much as we can, and we try to follow along with the traditions. I mean, John went down to the local temple when we were going to start our exploration program at Kato and spoke with a monk there, and they blessed our exploration program, and just small things like that we've done to just keep the traditions going in Japan. So it's not just Westerners coming in and doing as we please. I like that. I'm of a Japanese background, and so it's nice that we do these types of things. Nobody's telling us to do it. We just do it because we know it's the right thing to do. It's not like there's specific guidelines that you have to do these things. So I think that we do that. We employ the same kind of stuff in Zambia, and I'm sure anywhere we go in the future, we'll be very respectful for the countries and the local communities that we work in.
Derek, thank you for that. John, any comments on community?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's obviously a very critical part of any exploration program and mining business. And you know, it's something I've probably spent more than 20 years now exploring and working on development projects in Zambia, for example. And these are things in the companies that you start your career with, and it's certainly a very strong culture on with our co-directors on BeMetals, that being very respectful to the local traditions and communities. What we've tended to do in Zambia is we work very closely with our Zambian license holders, and they also help guide us through the correct procedures in Zambia over many years, our long relationship with them now. Engaging with the local chief, you know, there's certain courtesy things that you have to do. And we've made certain relatively low level, but still fairly targeted investments to support some education in the area by delivering what we call education packs, simple textbooks and exercise books, pens, pencils, rulers, that type of thing, getting them into the local village schools closest to where our drilling activities are. And as Derek mentioned, always where possible, trying to use local service providers, local labor, very important in Africa, certainly, and you know, try and spread the interest, and by doing the right things, transparency, dealing with people with respect, build up great support, which we have managed to do on our project in Zambia now over many years, and we have on our projects in Japan also.
So important, and I appreciate you guys, even as a small exploration company, the extra effort you guys are making to enhance local community and actually help provide education. Education specific as well to energy, where energy comes from, chemistry, engineering, these things that a lot of people have forgotten that we use in our daily lives. And obviously, the understanding and importance of responsible mining and exploration activities. I appreciate that. John, why don't we stick with you and then I'll have Derek maybe chime in on this as well. But with the current focus on Zambia, does the company, and of course you have Japan as well, that you guys have there as a secondary focus, but does the company remain interested in M&A activity to add further exploration or development projects to its portfolio?
Well, a little bit like we discussed with our Kazan portfolio in Japan. At this point, with the funding availability and the cost of that funding, we really focused on this next drilling campaign at Pangeni. That's really where our investors and potential future investors are going to see the next big catalyst. We're always keeping a watching brief on other projects, potential deals, potential M&A transactions. But at this point, we are so close to being a real driving catalyst with a discovery of what could be a new copper deposit in Zambia that that has to really take all our efforts at this point in time. And the important thing is we're doing that against a backdrop of rising copper prices, very strong fundamentals in copper, and really a lack of really true tier one targeted copper projects in jurisdictions that are really supportive into developing and increasingly develop their copper businesses.
Yeah, I'd just add that, looking at exploration companies in general, I'm sure you can attest to this. You have to look at the teams, and so I mean that was a big reason why I joined, was because I looked at the team and their ability to raise funds even in tough markets, which we're in. Um, it makes it a whole lot easier when you have good projects as well, and projects that are delivering results. And I know it's taken a while, but we are finally delivering really good results and meaningful results out of Zambia, especially. So if we can deliver more good results, we have the right team, we have great projects. For your listeners and for anybody else, we have a really low cost right now. I mean, our share price is at a 5-year low at the moment. So lower risk, I guess you could say, to get in right now. You have a better product in that we've always had the Pangeni property, but now we actually have been delivering good results. And if we continue to deliver more good results, we actually really may have a discovery on our hands. So we're even closer than ever before, and yet at a much lower price to get in at. So I would just kind of hammer that home.
Well said. Thank you, Derek, for that. Well, guys, why don't we stop there for now? Really appreciate you taking the time. Let's leave it there for this discussion. But before we go, for potential investors who are listening in, the company has a market capitalization of about 13.5 million Canadian dollars. Why should BeMetals be considered within the institutional, family office, and retail investors portfolio at this stage? John, you want to go ahead and answer that one first?
I think really it comes down to that catalyst of the copper mineralization that we're drilling out in Zambia. We're funded to drill another round of drilling that's really ongoing right now. We just started that drilling. As I mentioned earlier, one or two more intersections of that nature. And as Derek mentioned, we could be really sitting here with a new copper deposit discovery and a team built around that can deliver the value out of that and return that value to all the stakeholders. So really very exciting times. We would encourage people to invest at these levels. We would say there are many fundamentals here that could see that investment really turn into something very meaningful.
And with that, Derek, would like your comments on this as well, and then also the best way for folks to reach out to the company.
We'll just say it again. I mean, we got a really low cost to get into the shares. We're at potentially just on the verge of making the discovery here. And of course, we'll have to wait until the next drill results come out. But we're as excited as we've ever been. I'd say more excited than ever at the prospectivity of our Pangeni property. We had some good results coming out of Japan, but it's just too expensive for us to be drilling in both continents at the moment. So we had to focus on one, and Zambia was delivering the best results. And I would have to say that we probably get the best bang for the buck in that we have JOGMEC as our joint venture partner that's funding close to a third of the exploration costs there. So we're getting good results at a really good cost basis. And for anybody looking to get in, you could either buy it now and you can save us from saying "I told you so" in a couple months when we actually have some results and hopefully meaningful results. Then we can say that we actually did have something and we thought we were on the verge of it right now, this moment. And 2 months later, hopefully we can say that we actually have done it. Yeah, best way to contact me would be by email. You can send it directly to my email address, which is diwanaka@bmetalscorp.com. You can check out our website, which is www.bmetalscorp.com. We're all up on the social media. You can check us out on YouTube and LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or X now. So you can find us all over there, but we're happy to hear any thoughts or comments or questions that anybody out in the public has.
John, Derek, thank you for coming back on for an update. Best of luck on progress. You're coming up soon, and we look forward to talking again soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, Andrew.